How do you get fitter when there just isn't time? We all know our health and fitness is important, but there are things that just simply need done. It's all very well saying you should look after yourself, but when you have deadlines, responsibilities, family commitments, and bills to pay, it's not so easy. So, what can you do to ensure you don't fall into the spiral of poor health choices that often take over in these situations? Or if you're already down that hole, how can you get back out? Today, we're going to address why we end up in these situations, what to look out for to avoid it happening, how to turn your trajectory around, and outline the things that you can do to improve your health and fitness, even if you don't have time to get to the gym or have the energy for exercise by the time your other commitments have been dealt with. And we're starting right now. Before we go anywhere with this, there is one thing above all others that will help you get the most from this content. Empty your cup. If this phrase is not familiar to you, it comes from a story popularised by Bruce Lee. The short version is that when a cup is already full, no matter how much you continue to pour, the cup cannot take on any more liquid. And so with us, as sentient beings, we cannot absorb new ideas or change our circumstances if we approach them with a full cup. Some of the content I'm about to suggest may come across as simple, or you just know it won't work for you. But with that approach, no advice is ever going to help. You feel you know better. And when it comes to your body, your lifestyle, and your needs, there will be an element of truth to that. After all, how can anyone spouting ideas in a video know what's best for you? But by approaching this content with a closed mind, or allowing certain phrases or ideas to trigger you, you're blocking opportunity to find a new way of approaching things. Okay, let's get the triggering cliches out of the way, and while we're at it, assess their validity. It's very common to be told that you don't have a lack of time. Everyone has the same 24 hours available to them each day. What you do with them is up to you. That may be true in the sense that someone else who appears to have it easy has the same 24 hours, and through different choices you could be where they are now. The problem is, you are where you are. And if your career path is putting demands on you that require you to be working almost every waking minute, without which the consequences could be catastrophic. Maybe it's not your job, but you have a family member to care for that requires a significant portion of your time. You feel like you never stop, and that none of that time is being used frivolously. Having someone tell you that you have the same 24 hours as the girl who developed an app in her parents' bedroom and became a millionaire by 18 is not helpful. What is true is the second part. What you choose to do with your time is up to you. Yes, if you don't hit your deadlines or are not there for your business, the fallout could be catastrophic, but that's still a choice. You're choosing to give over your time to avoid that outcome. You could choose differently and accept the outcome. The family member that requires your care, you could choose not to give them so much of your time. It may feel callous, uncaring, or the wrong thing to do, but the fact remains it is still a choice. And it's important to see the distinction. To be clear, I'm certainly not saying you should stop doing any of these things, but as you will see shortly, by understanding the distinction, it can lead to better outcomes. This is something my gran used to drill into us when I was younger. You're nothing without your health. And that is 100% true. If you became critically ill tomorrow, you wouldn't be able to work. Your company would replace you within a few weeks. Or, if it's your company, your clients will find someone else. Those you support are not getting much benefit from you if you need care yourself, but regression in your health and well-being is often slow and unnoticeable, so it doesn't have the same emotional kick as a critical deadline or the feeling of responsibility for others, meaning it's easy to put off resolving health-related issues with the promise to yourself that you'll get on that later when there's more time. This is just how we're wired. We mostly react to what's going to happen soonest. This has been validated under scientific testing. As I'm sure you know, different parts of our brain respond to different types of information, and by monitoring brain activity, it's possible to know how someone is processing the information. There have been several studies in this area, one of the most recent being published in 2019, which I'll link below. The highlights being, when faced with our own mortality or the effects of our actions, our brain processes anything other than immediate threat as something happening to someone else. For example, someone in their 30s being told, if you don't make changes, you will be dead by the time you're 50 is still far enough removed from that outcome. What their brain interprets that as is, if you don't make changes, someone will be dead by the time they are 50. So when in a previous video I pointed out that it is estimated that over 5 million deaths every year could be avoided with a very small increase in daily movement, it's easy to dismiss that as applying only to other people, rather than finding a route to implementing the increased movement yourself. We can go deeper into that in a future video. For now, I simply wanted to point out why we are able to avoid following through on changes that we know logically are necessary for our long-term health. One thing you could react to right now though is to quickly hit that like button. It will help other people find this who just might need to hear it. You move where your focus is, though it is common to feel that you are very focused on something, yet it's the thing that eludes you the most. The problem, which is one of the core elements of my coaching framework, is it's rare for people to be focusing on what they want. They think that's what they're doing, but rather what they're focusing on is what they don't want. You want to lose weight. You're focused on the weight. Guess what you get more of? You want more money. You're focusing on your lack of money. Guess what you get more of? This is far too big a topic to go into here, but I will cover this more in the future. This, though, is the point many people feel that resistance I mentioned earlier. The reason being it feels like criticism, or if you do take it on board, you can become self-critical. But if you took the time to empty your cup before we reach this point, hopefully you can take this as simply information to ponder over the coming days. Okay, let's move on. Are you caught in the reactionary trap? It's easy to make plans when you have plenty of time and a clear head, but if you're constantly firefighting and feel like there aren't enough hours to get everything done, then taking time to plan things out is time you just don't have to spare. The result? You deal with things on a reactionary basis. How we react, though, is dictated by our values, though in many cases those values, when reviewed from a distance, work against us. And that's where our frustrations come from. For example, if your core values are to take care of your family and those close to you, deliver on your promises, give the best of yourself whenever possible, and to help or be there for others whenever possible, then anything that on the surface looks like it ticks one of these boxes is something you will likely give your full attention and effort. Anything that doesn't have an immediate impact on these values is catalogued internally as less important. As an example, a friend needs help moving furniture into their new home. Your values are to help people, so you agree. Then you remember you have a deadline at work. You don't have enough time to do the moving and get the project finished in time. Now you're left with a problem. With your friend, your core principles include delivering on your promises. You promised you would help. To take care of your family and those close to you. This friend is close to you. To give the best of yourself whenever possible. Letting a friend down doesn't feel like you're giving your best. On the work side though, you should deliver on your promises, and you committed to hitting this deadline. To give the best of yourself, you could have delivered on this if you hadn't promised to move the furniture. To look after your family. If you miss this deadline, you could lose a contract, or you're putting your job in jeopardy, which is not good for you or your family. What usually happens in such circumstances is you let down the friend, because the friend will be more forgiving. But now you feel bad because you've gone against your core values. If, however, your core values were to make as much money as possible and let others deal with their own issues, you wouldn't have any hesitation. You'd let down the friend, politely I'm sure, and not give it a second thought. But let's say your values are the same, only now you're reviewing the choice between the deadline and a workout. Working out doesn't, on the surface, hit any of your core values, so there's no choice to be made. You work in the deadline. And if this keeps recurring where there are choices between your health and well-being and options that tick your core values, you will never find the time for self-care elements. It's only when one day you collapse from a mild heart attack, suddenly it becomes clear that your actions of not looking after yourself has deviated from your core principles. You can't take care of your family or those close to you. In fact, they're having to find the time to take care of you. You can't deliver on your promises because you're in a hospital bed and everything's had to be put on hold. You're in no fit state to help anyone now. Now you feel the frustration and wish you'd put more emphasis on your health and your fitness, because now it's at odds with your core principles. So how do you get out of the reactionary trap? By finding time to review your principles, asking yourself why, and developing habits that align with your principles on a deeper level. which you'll now be more conscious of because you've taken time to look from a distance. Though, when I say habits, I'm not talking about the ones you might think. We're not talking about a 5:30 a.m. morning routine, squeezing in workouts on 4 hours sleep, cutting out carbs, or replacing chocolate with cabbage soup. It's something much simpler, but ultimately more effective. The first thing is to find your why. It's easy to feel like you can skip this step and just crack on with the tips. But if you do that, you'll quickly find yourself back in the reactionary trap. Yes, I know you don't have time, but the truth is you do. How can you say that? You don't know me. And it's true, I don't, but I do know how human physiology works. You cannot be actively doing stuff every waking minute. You might think you are, but you're not. Studies have proven that you cannot work effectively by working extended hours. The common rebuttal here is that you can at least do something though, and subpar is still progress. But these studies have shown conclusively that there is a threshold beyond which our output becomes so bad it's detrimental. We make more mistakes or we spend more time thinking and less time doing. The only problem is we don't notice we're doing it. So we still think we're doing more. All I can do is ask you to trust me and take a leap of faith. Find a 20-minute window in your diary where you will commit to give the time over to reflection, longer if you can manage it. There are many ways to do this. I can't cover them all, but a good option would be to go for a walk or take a hot bath or a shower 30 minutes before going to bed and spend that time exclusively focusing on this. Then give yourself a 10-minute window straight after to write down your thoughts. Then plan for a 10-minute window upon waking, perhaps with a glass of water, to review what you wrote and ensure you still agree with your decisions. Focus on what's important to you. Then develop your priorities. To do this, ask yourself why each thing is important to you. Once you have a list, put them in order of importance. Then ask yourself, are you giving time to the things on this list and in that order? For example, you may conclude that time with your family is important, but have convinced yourself that working every waking hour is something that you are doing for them, as financial stability is important. But which is higher on the list? And on review, where does your health and well-being come into this? This is not a simple exercise, and it's one you may struggle with and have to return to several times before it clicks. But in the long run, this is about your purpose for living, and some might argue that's quite important and worth finding the time for. So, you now know where self-care fits on your priority list, and it is possible that you realise that you're giving up time to things that do not warrant your attention. Keep in mind what I said in the previous video regarding feel-good hormones. If you haven't watched it, it's worth your time. I'll link to it at the end. No one can provide you with good feelings. The things you seek from external sources are simply a reflection of what you need internally. You don't need someone to love you, you need to feel loved. You don't need a high-paying job, you need a feeling of security. And if you know what it is you truly need, now you're in a better position to achieve it. Perhaps from a route you hadn't considered before. But assuming even with this review you understand that self-care is important, but you're still overwhelmed by the demands on your time, what can you do within these confines to make a positive difference? We've already covered taking time for reflection, but hopefully you've now realised taking a little time now can save you a lot of time later. Measure twice, cut once. And the same's true with your health and fitness pursuits. Along with the reactionary trap, many people fall foul of the all or nothing trap. Can't make it to the gym equates to can't do anything today. Don't have time to prepare a healthy meal? A sandwich and a packet of crisps will have to do. When you realise it doesn't have to be all or nothing, and you can focus down into the core elements that are holding you back, it becomes easier to implement a bite-sized approach to improvement. Where before you'd have thought, I don't have time for a workout, resulting in you doing nothing, if you have a bite-sized habit as your target, you can always do more if you have the time, but you're unlikely to do less, particularly if you keep it simple. When I work with clients one-to-one, I always show them this diagram. Having had them complete an analysis questionnaire, I'll already have some information, but we begin by reviewing the impact of each element within this structure from the bottom up. So, to quickly review the bottom layer, which I've named the elemental cores, there are 5 cores to review: water, sleep, fuel, clarity, and environment. These may seem obvious, but remember what I said at the beginning. Don't be too quick to dismiss. Do you get enough water to sustain your desired function and output level? Fall short and I can guarantee you're not functioning at your highest level. With sleep, it's beyond argument now how critical this is to how you function, but it also has a direct correlation to how you act when it comes to food, how you recover from exercise, and your mental health state, none of which you'll be aware of until after you've rectified it. Fuel here is more about consistency of input rather than specifics such as calorie intake, macronutrients, and the like. They're addressed at the higher levels of the framework. Clarity here refers to being clear on the obstacles in front of you, to have a plan before they appear. Where environment is to do with the space around you. Are your cupboards regularly stocked with nutritious options or junk food? Is the space around you clear enough to allow you to get up and move regularly? Another thing worth assessing early on is your breathing. This is something you can work on at any time and whilst doing other things, so you don't need additional time to take positive steps. But if you don't take the time to become aware of your breathing, you'll never know what to fix. For more on the power of breathing, have a look at my previous video on the benefits of yoga, which I'll link below. Once you start to get a feel for things you want to improve, look to tie purposeful improvements to things you already do. You brush your teeth every morning, right? So whilst you're brushing, you could be loosening off your knees and promoting lubrication by controlling a sit onto your heels, or working on your glute medius strengthening with close chain hip abductions. Tight pecs? Every time you walk through a door frame, could you take 20 seconds to stretch your pecs? Whenever you put on a kettle or pour yourself a glass of water, could you have a band nearby to perform a set of pull-aparts? You can substitute any mobilization movement, stretch, core activation, or strengthening exercises in here. Don't just blindly follow the examples given. Rather, use your reflection time to work out what is of greatest importance to you and implement this until it becomes a habit. Then move on to the next element. The one thing to keep in mind here is to temper your expectations. Often people integrate these changes into their lives and become extremely proud of themselves for doing so, rightfully so, but then have an expectation of bigger changes than they're seeing. Keep in mind, drinking sufficient water or getting enough sleep is necessary for bigger changes to occur. They're the foundations on which further improvements are built. You can't skip them and hope to succeed, but similarly, they're not going to make significant changes on their own. A common example is when someone decides to start walking 10,000 steps a day. It's a big shift in pattern and they feel better for it. But on checking after a month or so, there's virtually no difference in their waist size. Their weight's still the same and they think, what's the point? The point is you are now better primed to get more out of any future changes you make. Your heart and lungs are healthier, you have the capacity to do more, and your discipline for including exercise and self-care in your routine is more firmly in place. Doing the basics won't get you ripped or even in great shape, but it will leave you primed to make the most of things when you do find the time. And increased energy and focus, along with improved mobility, balance, and general functioning, are only going to make that more likely. Keep in mind, there is a reason you clicked on this video. You know on some level how important your health and fitness are to you, but if you continue to address them in a reactionary way, you'll continue to lose the internal battle. We're all working from internal ethical standards. However, if we don't take time to define our values or continue to react to circumstances and situations, rather than taking a minute to review the knock-on effects of our choices, we continue to get caught in the reactionary trap. And if you're there already, only you can break out through deliberate thought and evaluation of your priorities and values, assessing why they're important to you, on what scale, and whether the distraction or time-draining activity in front of you is in line with these values. Then, looking for a structured approach to moving you forward in pursuit of your value-aligned goals, meaning working smarter, not harder. By setting smaller, achievable, bite-sized goals, you're more easily able to find ways to incorporate them into your existing routine. And because they fit in with your core identity, and you're fully aware of that, they're more likely to stick and become unconscious habits. By building on these habits, not only will you continue to move towards your goals, rather than the sprint, stop, start methods commonly used, but the benefits may well spread to the rest of your life. With more energy, less pain, and more confidence in yourself because of your self-care improvements, You're likely to be more productive at work and better company for those around you. If you're more productive and less prone to mistakes, perhaps that starts to free up time in your diary, and now you can use that free time to make further improvements. And so the cycle continues. Then, when you reach the point where you do have a chunk of time that you could commit to your health and fitness, you will have addressed the foundational elements, making your next set of actions even more impactful. And if you feel you're at that stage already, or want more information on feel good hormones or the perils of inactivity on your long term health, then you should watch this video next. Alternatively, stay tuned for future videos where I'll be discussing some of the elements touched on here in more detail, along with additional content to help you move forward on your health and fitness journey.